and they increase their overall sales on that funnel by 10% just from one email.
Hey podcast listener, you're about to discover insider tips, tricks, and secrets to making more sales and converting more prospects into customers with email marketing. For more information about the Email Marketing Podcast or the Autoresponder Guy, go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Hey everybody, it's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy, and it's time for episode 25 of the Email Marketing Podcast, where we talk about the top tips, tricks, and secrets for making more sales and growing your revenue with email marketing. Today, I'll be talking to Chris Hexton, one of the co-founders of a software or application called Vero. Now, Vero allows you to send emails to prospects and customers based on what behaviors they have taken on your site and with your product. So this is basically event-triggered marketing or behavior-triggered marketing. So an example is cart abandonment. And if you're into e-commerce, you'll know what this is. Say someone goes to your site, adds 3 products to the cart, goes all the way through, and right before they pay, they close the tab. They get second thoughts. They decide they don't want to do it. So they bail out. Now, what you can do if you have the right software is you can send them an email after they've quit, say 1 hour later, and say, hey, we've got your card here, we've saved it, we're just waiting for you to give us your payment details so we can send your stuff out. Now, a good cart abandonment sequence can increase your revenue by 10 to 15%, so this can be worth a lot of money to you. Now, it also works for, say, here's an example from the McIntyre Method. Say someone signs up and watches, there's, I think, 6 videos in week 1. Say they only watch 5, and that I really want them to watch video 6 as well so they get the most out of the product. I can automatically send them an email. I can say, hey man, you haven't watched video 6, so here's a link, go and watch it, and then next week you'll be ready for week 2. So you can use this to make more sales, you can use this to increase engagement with people, and I think at its core why I love it and why I find it so fascinating is because I'm a big believer in relevance, and that the more relevant you can make your marketing, the more you can target your prospects and customers with things that actually matter to them, the more successful you're going to be. So I had a great time talking to Chris, and I think this podcast, this interview is going to be really, really valuable, not just to e-commerce people and software as a service people, but to everyone, if only from the relevance perspective. But there are some really interesting ways you can use this in, say, info product business, like, say, the McIntyre Method, or just there's a whole range of applications. So we'll get into that in just a minute. To get the show notes for this episode of the Email Marketing Podcast, go to dropdeadcopy.com/EP25. Okay, I have one question this week. This is not a voicemail question. This came to me via a Drop Dead Copy survey. And the question is, what copywriting books would you recommend? Now, this is a great question, but there is a bit of a twist in here, which I'll show you in just a minute. There's 2 books I'll recommend, and it's none of the new stuff. Some of the new stuff can be good, but the really, really, the big nuggets are going to be in some of the old books. And the first book you just start with is Scientific Advertising. And David Ogilvy, who's also known as the father of advertising, he, big time New York Madison Avenue agency, and he's famous for saying that he wouldn't hire anyone unless they'd read Scientific Advertising 7 times. It's a very simple book. You can read it in, say, an hour or 2, depending on how quick you read, but it will really open your eyes to how you have to think about marketing and copywriting to be good at it. So I'd start there, and then I would also read Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. Both of these books are on Amazon. The links are in the show notes at dropdeadcopy.com, and they're 2 good books to start with, but the twist on this question that I really want to touch on is you don't learn to write good copy by reading books about writing good copy. How I got started, how I became a copywriter and started getting clients to pay me thousands of dollars to do it, was I literally got old sales letters from 20, 30, 50 years past, and I knew had converted and made a lot of sales. Now these are publicly available. There's a link on the site where you can get more information about that. Basically, I sat down with a pen, pencil, and a pad, and I wrote these sales letters out by hand. So I wrote the headline, the testimonials, the copy, and what that really does is it trains your subconscious. It sounds wacky, it sounds crazy. I know some of you are going to know, I've heard of this thing before, and a lot of people ask me about this habit or this way of learning, and I honestly credit it with that's the big reason why I can read copy. It's not because I read the books. It's because I really took the time to study sales letters and marketing and things like that have worked in the past, and you can't skip that. So if you're not willing to sit down and at least do it for 50 or 100 of them, if you're not willing to sit down and write sales letters out, old sales letters for an hour a day, then I don't think you're ready to be a copywriter. It's not for you. Now, if you want sales letters to write out, go to infomarketingblog.com. That link is on the website as well. And the other thing I think you should read, if you're looking to get into marketing and copy and direct response stuff, is the Gary Halbert newsletter. That is thegaryhalbertletter.com. and start there. Just click around and read them. On the site, I'm going to link to a post on his site called Hands-On Experience. Now, Gary Halbert he's one of the most famous copywriters around. He used to call himself the greatest copywriter alive, and no one argued with him about it. So he was fantastic at what he did, and he was really great at teaching it. So I'd start, go check out the Gary Halbert letter. Now, there's a link on dropdeadcopy.com to Gary Halbert's newsletter, to a post there where he says, if you want to become good at copywriting in 30 days, if you just had 30 days to learn how to write good copy, you go and read these books and you write these sales letters out by hand. Now, you'd be working your ass off for 30 days, but it's a great starting point for someone who wants to learn to write copy. So I would go there. That's some of the books you can read. I really hope that helps. But just remember that at the end of the day, you have to be writing stuff, writing old school sales letters down. And also as well is you want to start writing your own copy or copy for clients as soon as possible, because you're really going to learn when you actually put tire to rubber, put pedal to the metal, and actually go and do something with it. So that's what I think there. And that's all I have for now. Let's go get into this interview with Chris Hexton about behavioral email. It's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder guy. I'm here with Chris Hexton, the co-founder of Vero, a wicked piece of software that lets you send emails to prospects and customers based on behaviors they take on your site. So say you have someone on your website who adds a few things to their shopping cart but leaves before checking out, you can actually send them an email the next morning reminding them about their cart. Or suppose someone hasn't visited your site in 30 days, you can send them an email to try and get them to come back. So there's some really, really cool stuff you can do with this, with behavioral email is what it's called, or event-triggered email. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. It's all about increasing conversions, not just clicks and open rates. And that's really cool because conversions are what truly matter. So how are you going today, Chris?
I'm going really well. Thanks for having me on, John. It's awesome to be here.
Cool. Thanks for coming on. Before we get into the behavioral email stuff, start by telling us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So, my name's Chris Hexton. I'm one of the two co-founders of Vero. I guess a bit about myself, the most relevant would be what I do every day. Basically, I run the business side of things here. So I spend a lot of time talking to customers about their email marketing campaigns, and I spend a lot of time working on our own email marketing campaigns. Trying to learn more and more about what works best, what people are doing out there that's new and different, and I spend a lot of time as well, taking that knowledge and turning it into our blog, which is a really important part of our own marketing and just a really interesting exercise for me to put down new thoughts on paper. Okay, cool. And it's good to have. I just thought of something that it's good to have an Australian on the show because most of the guys that I talk to, they're all Americans, and you're in Sydney right now, which is where I'm from. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, it's awesome to be talking to an Aussie, as is always the case.
Absolutely, man. People will just be the same accent or similar accents this time. So, all right, let's get into the behavioral email stuff. What is behavioral email?
Yeah, so behavioral email, as I would define it, is sending emails to your customers or automating emails to your customers based on what they've done or what they haven't done. So in other words, based exactly on their behavior. And we've taken the approach of helping customers track what their customers are doing on their website or in their mobile apps in real time, and then building up customer profiles based on these actions that they're taking, whether it's looking at a product, using a particular feature, clicking a certain button, subscribing, etc. And making it really easy to turn all of those real-time actions into emails that go out at the right time to try and get a conversion, basically.
So one thing that I noticed you talking about a bit on the blog is the advantage of behavioral or event-triggered email to direct response email. I think that'd be a really interesting thing to talk about because a lot of what the guys I've talked to is it's all very direct response based and trying to get the biggest open rate and make an offer and all that sort of thing. So in your opinion, what's the advantage of doing email the event-based way versus doing this offer? Yeah,
so I think traditionally, email's grouped into two categories. So, newsletters or direct response, as you're calling it. So where you sort of send a similar email to a list of people. In other words, one email to a whole bunch of people. And you might try different ideas, but the core there is that you're sending an email to all these people at once. And then the other end of the spectrum, you had transactional emails, which are things like, oh, you forgot your password, or here's your receipt. And those are obviously sent at times when a customer had just taken an action. So those were the sort of two big groupings of emails. And behavioral email is what I call the sweet spot in between, where you're sending these emails based on what people have done, so that there's a context, and the customers are probably expecting these emails or something like them, or at the very least, they understand why this email's arrived in their inbox. And the beauty of sending an email in that sense is that you're trending towards the transactional side of things. So, traditionally, transactional emails have a 52% open rate, I believe, on average, versus your sort of newsletters, which have an average open rate of 20%. So, just by the very nature of the email, because it's expected or has context, you're going to get a higher open and click-through rate. And when you're sending behavioral email, it's got a marketing component. So you're really maximizing the effect of these automated emails. And so I think the reason it's so powerful is because of, this context, as I call it, because it's based on something the customer has done or hasn't done. And that generally just makes a lot more sense to the recipient.
Absolutely. I mean, when you send an offer email out, someone's opening their email with this mindset, they're about to sell me something, or you have the forgotten your password emails. But then, so what you're talking about is someone does something on the site or in the app or clicks on something or doesn't do something and then sending them an email based on that. So it's relevant and also bypasses all the resistance to being sold something.
Yeah, exactly. I think it allows you to be more subtle. And, one of the other components, which I'm sure we'll come to in a sec, is that, I think, being the autoresponder guy, all about this, having a series of emails, based on a behavior then is even more powerful because it allows you to build that trust over time. And because the emails are so targeted based on what someone's clicked on or hasn't done or has done, you get to a point where you can make a sale, but it's in a much more subtle fashion where you've sort of earned the customer's trust rather than being quite in your face with, well, here's a discount, here's an offer, buy now, buy today sort of thing. And it's an approach that seems to work really well for our customers.
Okay, so you don't have to just send one email based on a behavior. You can send a series of emails or like an autoresponder based on something they did.
Well, absolutely. So, cart abandonment's obviously bread and butter that hopefully most people are doing. But there's been tons of studies to say that if you send one cart abandonment email, you're going to obviously get a return on your investment. But if you send 2 or 3, perhaps one 4 hours later, one 24 hours later, and one 3 or 4 days later, you're going to get much more effective results. And I think the reason for that is people sometimes assume that if someone doesn't respond to a single email, then they're not interested at all. But there's a lot of reasons people don't open or click through on an email. Perhaps they're trying to make dinner, or perhaps they're on, they've just gotten to work and they've got 100 things to deal with, or whatever. So sending a series, generally always converts better. So yeah, definitely you can trigger a series of emails based on behavior.
Okay. When I spoke to Ezra Firestone, we did a podcast together, and he mentioned that when you do the abandonment sequences, some people might just do one email, but you can actually do say 5 emails or even 7 emails. And each time, as well as just sending them more emails, you can actually vary the offer. So some people are going to care about a discount. Some people are going to care about, other stuff. So it can also help in this kind of scenario to vary the offer, because some people will want to save money, some people want more value, some people want to save time, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and look, and going beyond that, even with what we try and work with customers to do is, let's say you send a series of 5, 6, 7 offers as Ezra has recommended. That's perfect, right? And you start to then learn, well, if someone was to respond to a particular type of offer, perhaps that puts them in a segment where that they're a price-sensitive customer, or perhaps you can tell that there's someone who thinks they're a VIP, and so next time you can sort of send the most likely offer up front or something like that. So that's where the behavior aspect really comes into it, like learning from every step that the customer takes.
That's a really great point.
Feeding it back into their profile sort of thing.
Okay, yeah, so you could build your list of your price-sensitive, your budget shoppers, and then the other people who like to spend big because they've got lots of money, or it's a prestige thing or something like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's lots of really good case studies out there. If you Google RFM, which is what it's often called, or the basis for those sort of groupings like recency, frequency, and monetary spend or something like that. But yeah, if you Google RFM, email marketing success stories, there's lots of stuff out there.
Okay. And another thing, Vishen Lakiani from Mind Valley mentioned in a podcast was that as well as just sending offers, you can also send stuff like the $1 trial. I mean, that's a bit of an offer, but you can also do like the FAQ email. So people might have common objections that no one's really dealing with. And that could be the abandonment email. Maybe they're not buying because they have an objection.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got a really relevant story about that. And one of our customers, they're a travel site, and they've got a sort of 2 or 3 step, probably 2 now, 2-step process where you say, I want to go from Sydney to San Francisco. And you put up some other details related to your trip, and they're basically like an online online flight agent. Yeah, Flight Fox. And so the second step is you have to put in your credit cards. You sort of have to put a deposit down is the best way to explain it. So they obviously have a big drop off between those 2 steps, and they implemented a single retargeting email for people who completed the first step but not the second, because they've obviously got a lot of information based on where people are going. And yeah, that campaign was exactly as you're talking about there. It was a FAQ email where it just had the 3 most common questions people asked on their support desk after completing that first step, and they laid them out in an email, plain text, question answer format, and they increased their overall sales on that funnel by 10% just from one email, which is pretty awesome. And that's ongoing till today because it's automated. So it's a real success story.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine what would happen if you have that a little change like that. One email boost conversions by 10%, and you do that. You could just keep implementing different things. So after 10, 20, 30 different optimizations, you could be doubling or tripling the business.
Exactly, and then that's just on a first run. So you can optimize each of those emails as well. So it's it's pretty awesome, and the automated nature obviously means it just runs all the time, whether you're asleep or awake, and you don't have to queue it up or anything. So it's awesome for that reason as well.
The automatic sales machine.
Well, exactly.
Okay, so give me some examples of event-based emails, the sort of things where we've got the abandonment sequence is the obvious one. What are some other ones that maybe aren't so obvious, but you've seen really great results with?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of common ones. I mean, so a lot of the customers I work with, they're across all sorts of industries, from travel to gaming, e-commerce, obviously, and also online software companies. So I guess some of the common ones, in the online software world, the most common one, or the most talked about at the moment, probably is there's probably two. So one is when people sign up for your software, sending an automated email, perhaps like 30 minutes or maybe 47 minutes, quite quickly after a new free trial sign up occurs, sending a personal email or a personal looking email from a member of the executive team that's just like, hey, Chris, I saw you signed up to blah, blah, awesome, welcome aboard. If you've got any questions, hit reply from John, CEO, whatever. That's one really common automation that's happening at the moment. And a lot of software as a service companies are using it to great effect because, a lot of people perhaps realize it's automated. Some people don't. But in either case, it's a nice sort of personal touch, as if someone cares that you've signed up. And then attached to that is, having a series, an autoresponder that is targeted. So, you might send a series of 7 emails over a 30-day free trial when someone signs up for your software product.
Yep.
And then targeting the content of each of those 7 emails based on what the customer's actually done. So if they've signed up and they've used features X and Y, then perhaps email 3 will be introducing feature Z. So, being really targeted about the autoresponder you set up. And that gets great results as well because you're obviously targeting each individual person at where they are in your funnel and getting them to move to the next step, which might be using feature Z or whatever. So yeah, that's a common one as well.
Okay, I really like that one. I worked with a software company, it was like 6 months ago, and we had this problem. We just did an autoresponder for them, but a straight 10 emails for the free trial, and then it asked them to sign up. But this makes so much more sense when you could have, say, an email or a couple of emails based on each feature inside the software, and then the software sends them out for you automatically based on what they use and don't use in the software. I mean, that's genius.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's almost like an optimization on the classic autoresponder where you've got to be doing this stuff. You've got to be sending educational emails to people when they sign up. And so if you can take it to the next level and each email is like exactly what the person hasn't done, it's generally a good thing.
Right. Okay. So you can do, I've got a list here of other things. Like you can do, so when the user doesn't sign in after joining the free trial, you can offer them help. When they haven't used a popular feature, you can suggest it to them. So that's what we're just talking about. And then when the user nears a threshold, you could remind them about the benefits of the software. So the trial might expire and then you could remind them. You'd have didn't sign up after a trial, and you could have a sequence after that. So you could have a sequence just tied to any sort of event in the entire piece of software. Absolutely.
And sort of ensure that people aren't getting multiple sequences at once, or getting the right balance. But yeah, I mean, that example there where you're talking about the thresholds is a really interesting one as well. So, in other words, preparing someone for an upgrade or encouraging them to upgrade early. I've seen that work well. Sending emails to ask people to upgrade, to annual licenses can work, really effectively as well. It's obviously great for any online business. So there's also, like you said, you could tie it to any sort of metric that you're trying to increase. There's often a good case to tie an email back to that.
I saw in one of your blog posts you mentioned OkCupid, and I see this with dating sites all the time because they send you an email. Not that I'm on that many dating sites or anything, but they send you an email, and it's like so-and-so was looking at your profile, and it's got a picture of them, and it's got a little bio at their profile, and maybe they clicked show interest or something like that, and that's just a classic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think those sorts of sites, particularly OkCupid, is famous for its data-driven manner. So I don't know if you haven't read their blog, go and find their blog. It's got some amazing stuff on there. But they understand that everything in their software should be driven by data, and they've really refined things. So those are killer examples of emails. It's driven by a specific action that another customer in the OkCupid world's taken The emails are generally very simple, very strong call to action. And as you said, that they're appealing. They make sense to you. They've got a photo. There's a reason for you to click through on them. They're a great example of behavioral email, in my opinion.
Okay, fantastic. What are some other really good examples? I know you mentioned Amazon on your site.
Yeah, so I think Amazon's the godfather of this stuff. There's always stuff they could do better, but I think they're probably the trendsetters, as they have been in so many areas. If you go to Amazon.com and you are assigned, if you're a registered member, nearly everything you see is personalized, and their emails are no different. They send you a lot of, I'm sure everyone's seen, like product recommendation emails, such as you bought this book, you might like these other books. But they'll do other things, like if you're browsing a particular category. I think the example on my site's cameras. Let's say you're browsing Canon cameras. You might not have received an email from Amazon for a while, but because you browsed Amazon cameras, you're all of a sudden going to start to get a stream of emails which are, recommending related cameras, or perhaps there'll be an offer on the particular camera you looked at, or perhaps that they'll do even really innovative things, which is why I think they're awesome, because, as far as they're concerned, you're interested in cameras, so they're going to try and sell you one. And they'll do things like say, hey, we're having a sweepstake on products that start with the letter, C this week. So we're having a sweepstake on cameras. And it's one of those emails that looks really sort of like, oh, what are the odds of that? They're having a sweepstake on cameras, but it's obviously targeted to you, and they're using a non-traditional format. So they really test and send you a whole bunch of different emails based on what you've done on the site. So I think they're a fantastic example that you should watch out for their emails and learn from.
Absolutely. I just thought it was funny when you mentioned Amazon and said to go there. I went there. I'm already clicking and opening tabs into books where it tells me what to explore, because it's all related to what I've already been looking at.
Exactly. They're really good at it. They've just got truckloads of data, and I'm sure they must have an amazing data science team. They obviously put a lot of effort into it. But even little things like what's in the header of the emails, or the menu in the header, it can change, or it can be very, very specific. So every part of the email is optimized, and I just think they're fantastic.
Okay. Is there any risk of coming across as creepy when you say a user? In Amazon, the example that I've heard is, let's say someone sends you a link to a camera in your email, and you click on it and go and look at it. Maybe look at the reviews or whatever. You might even already have the camera, and then a day or two later, you don't even add it to your cart, but you're logged into your Amazon account, and then a couple of days later, or the next day, Amazon sends you an email about that camera with a discount for that camera. Now that's there's an element here where it's a little bit creepy. It's almost like, how does Amazon know what I'm looking at? We get it because this is what we do for business, but the average person, is this going to make them feel stalked, or, especially in light of all the recent NSA stuff in the US?
Yeah, I think there's always a fine line. So I think you definitely have to be aware of it. We haven't run into any cases, and I'm not aware of any customers who have, where there's ever been that sort of, feedback from customers. What I always recommend is, always watch your unsubscribes, or, and as well as your opens and clicks, obviously, but watch your metrics, and you can, if you watch trends, you can kind of get a sense of whether or not people are engaged with these emails or not. And if they're not, it could be for many reasons. And one of those reasons could be that they're finding it creepy rather than encouraging. So if that's the case, well, then, learn from that, and perhaps A/B test and change your tack. So I would definitely say that. But I think people are, in the case of Amazon, for example, you have to be logged in for this sort of data to be collected. And they make it pretty obvious that you are logged in. I think it says in big writing up the top somewhere like, hey, Chris, welcome back. And I don't know. I think as time goes by, people have a better understanding of how their interactions with the web result in this sort of stuff. And yeah, so I haven't seen any, massive faux pas occur. But yeah, it's definitely something to be aware of.
Okay. And who should be doing this? This works well, I'm guessing, for e-commerce businesses and SaaS businesses. Are they the main ones, or are there other businesses that can benefit from this type of email strategy?
No, I think, I think any online business that at some point in the process gets a customer's email and wants to increase a metric can put this stuff to work. A surprising one might be, online social games or iPhone social games, that sort of thing. You might think, well, that's probably an odd market. How could email help there? But the fact of the matter is, email is actually a great channel for that sort of application, because a lot of people open emails on their phone and they're playing the game on their phone. So there's a direct link there. A lot of email is very, very cheap. So it's a great driver to get people back into the game, versus online advertising and whatnot. And you can be very clever with email, like what the emails look like. And if they're targeted, then, they can be a perfect link. So, I just think that's an example where some people are like, well, it couldn't work for online gaming, but we've seen some real success stories. So, I think if you can get your customers' email and you have their permission and there's a genuine case where you can send them something useful, then I don't see why this couldn't increase some of your metrics.
Okay. So I have a product called the McIntyre Method. It's an information product, a video course. So someone logs into a membership site on Wishlist and clicks to each video. There's kind of like, let's say 5 videos per week or something like that. So I could use like a software like yours, Vero, to track, let's say someone looks at 4 out of 5 videos in week 2. I could then send them an email saying, hey, make sure you watch video 5.
Exactly. So you could, use our JavaScript. You'd basically be tracking, you could track when they clicked play on each video, most likely, depending what video player you're using. And then, that data is in real time and you could log in and visually set up a campaign that says if they've watched, video A and haven't progressed to video B, I want to send them this particular email. If they have, video B and haven't gone to C or whatnot, I want to send this one. So that's exactly how you could use it.
Okay. And it's like, when they've watched every single video, so you could be sure they've been through the course, then you could say, well, let's trigger, upsell sequence number 1 or something like that. So you can start sending them upsells based on if they've consumed your product first.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Okay, fantastic. Now, what are the practical steps for setting something like this up? Obviously, it involves using your software. So maybe this is about the time to kind of, we're all about at time now anyway, but let's wrap up talking about the practical steps someone can take to set something like this up and, talk about Vero as well in there and explain how that helps make it happen.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's only really 2 steps. So one is you've got to be capturing what your customers are doing on your site. And in the case of Vero anyway, that's modeled off, the way we capture that data is using JavaScript, and it's modeled off Google Analytics. So it's, copy paste snippet into the header of your site. You've got to define what the important lifecycle events are for your company. So for an e-commerce store, things like viewed product, viewed cart, begins checkout, and you put a few little snippets of JavaScript in the right places. But once that's done, it's done forever. And then the second aspect is to actually create a few campaigns. And Vero, I guess, is similar to MailChimp and other providers where it's all visual. It's hopefully very easy to use. Visual rule builders, etc., to build your autoresponders, and away you go. The magic happens. We put all the pieces together, and the magic happens in between. And I guess the other thing to think about is, well, where do you begin? There's obviously millions of, probably plenty of emails you could send. So I always say to people, well, pick one particular step in your funnel where there is the biggest drop off or where you're least happy with the current situation, and start there and think about, well, how can I incorporate email? If you think about FlightFox, they had that big drop off between the first step and the second step. The second step to the third step wasn't as bad. So they said, well, let's just start here, implement an email, and you see results overnight. So it's a very rewarding thing to do.
Okay, fantastic. And if they want to learn more about you or just Vero in general, so your website is at getvero.com.
Exactly. So getvero.com. But I think the best place to start would be to check out the blog. This stuff's really fascinating, and we try and put case studies on there. We try and put interesting things we've seen from other companies like OkCupid or Amazon, and any other thoughts we've had along the way. So I'd head to blog.getvero.com and go wild. And if you want to get in touch with me, more than welcome to email me. My email is chris@getvero.com, and love hearing from people. So go for it.
Okay, well, I'll have those links down in the show notes at dropdeadcopy.com so people can go there and click over. Thanks again for your time and coming on to talk about it.
No worries. Thanks for having me, John. It's been awesome.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you want to discover more insider tips, tricks, and secrets about driving sales with email marketing, sign up for daily email tips from the Autoresponder guy. Go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Sign up, confirm your email address, and I'll send you daily emails on how to improve your email marketing and make more sales via email. You'll find out why open rates don't matter and the 7-letter word that underlies all effective marketing and much more.